Hello everybody, and welcome back to Cam Critiques. Camelot has been struggling with their Mario sports games for many years now. I'd argue 2015's Mario Tennis Ultra Smash is one of the worst games Nintendo has ever put their name on. 2018's Mario Tennis Aces was a step in the right direction, but it still wasn't great. However, Mario Golf Super Rush looked like it might truly be Camelot's turn to form. It was released following the biggest gap between Camelot's games in history, so it seemed like they really took their time with this one. It has an RPG story mode, great fan service characters like Pauline and King Bob-omb at launch, and cool new ideas like Battle Golf. So, did it deliver? Is Camelot and Mario Tennis and Golf finally back? Well, you'll have to watch more to find out. Let's get started by talking about the gameplay. The core gameplay of Mario Golf Super Rush is pretty much exactly what you'd expect. In every mode you're playing some form of golf. You bring different clubs, aim where you want to shoot with the help of a map, and launch your shot with varying power levels selected via a gauge on the screen. You've got to account for varying terrain and wind as well. All of this stuff is perfectly fine. You've got good control of where the ball goes, there's actual skill involved in timing and positioning your shots, and there's lots to consider as far as different clubs, wind, terrain, and launch direction goes. There's enough variety to keep you engaged. Though that's not what really matters here. The core gameplay is fine, but what about the courses? What about the modes? Those are what make a golf game fun. The single player mode is interesting. It's got more to it than I expected following Mario Tennis Aces. There are 5 different explorable hub areas, side quests, boss battles, experience points, levels, stats, and even a few cutscenes. But none of these things are particularly fleshed out. The story mode still feels mostly like an afterthought. The hub areas have more effort put into them than I expected. There's a good variety of locations and lots of NPCs to talk to. Some of the dialogue is mildly entertaining as well. But even still, the layouts are really basic. The hubs are all pretty much just 1 to 5 square rooms. Sometimes rooms are even copy-pasted, and the NPCs are all boring toads, Goombas, Koopas, etc. These aren't terrible. I'm happy hub areas are here at all after the last few Camelot games, but they aren't great. The side quests are extremely underwhelming. There are a few rooms connected to the hub areas where you'll find generic NPCs that give you putting challenges. That's it. There are basically just 5 or so generic side quests copied and pasted for the different courses. You don't even get any sort of reward for doing all of them, just more coins and experience for completing each one, which you get more than enough of in the main story anyway. The boss battles here are extremely bizarre. I don't want to show footage of them here, partially because of spoilers, and partially because I don't even know if I could scrounge up enough footage to cover this section. There are only a couple of boss battles, and they're really short and easy. The designs are neat, but they're pretty underwhelming. Experience points are rewarded for completing different side quests and mainline quests. Once you get enough to level up, you choose a stat to improve. You improve stats like speed and control. The minor improvements from each individual stat increase are almost impossible to notice most of the time, so leveling up never feels particularly satisfying. You are notably stronger by the end for sure, but you're almost too strong. It feels impossible to lose by the time you reach the last area. The cutscenes are extremely underwhelming. The opening one is pretty great, but all the story mode cutscenes are short and oddly ugly. They've got smooth animation, but look visually worse than the gameplay does. They look blurry. Nothing super interesting happens in any of them too. The story mode here has the shell of a great single player golf game, but nothing is done quite right. The areas and NPCs are largely uninteresting. The boss battles and cutscenes are underwhelming. The RPG mechanics aren't particularly rewarding and almost start to make the game feel more boring as you progress. The difficulty seems to get lower as your opponents don't increase at nearly the same rate as you. I appreciate that the story mode is here, and I like some ideas like different types of golf for each area. I also like the core gameplay well enough, as I said, and I think the different gear you can buy here is neat despite it not being plentiful. Sadly though, the mode as a whole is just not particularly well executed. So, what is there to do after you've completed the 3 to 5 hour story mode? Well, not too much. You can play standard golf or speed golf, but it'll entirely take place on courses you already completed in the story mode. At least, that's the case at the time I'm writing this. It sounds like more courses are coming later. Or you can do battle golf, which only has 1 course. Standard golf is pretty much exactly what the name says. You play normal golf. There are a few different options, but the one where you have to wait for everybody to take their shot before taking yours is definitely not what I'd recommend. Thankfully, you can play with everyone hitting the ball simultaneously. This mode would probably be better if there were more courses that weren't in the story mode, but as it is now, it gets old pretty quick. Speed golf is interesting. Everyone plays at once and they have to sprint to the ball to hit it again each time. You can use a dash to hit and slow down other players, and the goal is to have the lowest time at the end. However, every stroke adds 30 seconds, which is way too big a chunk of time in my opinion. Because of this, speed doesn't really matter. Even hitting other people only costs them a second or two. At the end of the day, what really matters here is getting the lowest number of strokes. So it's very similar to standard golf. As a result, it gets similarly old. Battle golf seems to be Nintendo's weird take on a golf battle royale of sorts. Players are dropped into a big arena and must rush to be the first to get 3 holes. Once a hole is claimed, another can't take it. This is a clever idea, but it's got some issues. Again, there is only one arena, and it's kind of big, but not huge. So you only have so many strategies. Usually there are 1 or 2 holes that make sense for you to go for, and the optimal strategy is to rush. So you don't think much here. The terrain of this arena is pretty simple too. There aren't any complex obstacles to navigate. I think there are supposed to be different events to spice things up that occur after some time has passed, but I legitimately do not know. Why? Because I've never played a match that lasted long enough for any of them to actually happen. There's a timer on screen, but I've never seen it hit 0. I've never seen a round of this mode pass a minute in length. This mode is simple, it doesn't have much to do, and it lacks variety. I realize that I haven't mentioned the special shot yet. You get an energy meter that charges as you play, and once full you can press a button to unleash a character-specific special shot. It doesn't add that much to the game, the special shots don't even go all that far or do all that much, but the animations for them are nice. So, that's the basic gameplay and modes. Now let's talk about the character roster. There's a pretty solid selection here, with all the main staples present and some nice odd choices to select from. I again particularly appreciate King Bob-omb being back. But the characters are very poorly balanced. Take a look at the stats of Donkey Kong and Bowser. Donkey Kong is literally objectively worse. There are some characters that just aren't worth picking up. I want to play as Pauline or King Bob-omb all the time, but they're just not as good as most of the other characters. If I choose them, I'm at a disadvantage, and that's disappointing. I like that the different characters play differently, but I wish they were actually balanced. This game has both traditional button controls and motion controls. I would recommend totally sticking to button controls. The motion controls work mostly fine, but they give you far less control over the shot. You can't be nearly as precise with power as you can be with buttons. I have one more big issue to bring up. The single player works fine, and so does the local multiplayer, but the online is pretty bad. I tried to play every type of golf online multiple times. I finished multiple battle golf modes as they were so short, but I never got far in standard golf or speed golf online before a connection error ended my game prematurely. Not once did I complete a game in either of these modes. I even occasionally saw these connection errors in battle golf, with its typical 1-minute rounds. I checked my internet connection and other Switch games, and this doesn't seem to be a problem on my end. I have played through Splatoon or Mario Kart matches totally fine, but the vast majority of my Mario Golf matches ended early. There was no real lag during the short life of those matches, but this issue is hard to overlook. So, in conclusion, the gameplay of Mario Golf Super Rush is not great. The core gameplay is good enough, but the modes built around it are all fairly lackluster. Many other aspects of the game feel poorly thought out as well, and the online barely works. I give the gameplay of Mario Golf Super Rush a 5 out of 10. Now, onto the story and characters. The story of Mario Golf Super Rush isn't particularly important, but it's still kind of disappointing here. There is an RPG mode with cutscenes and dialogue after all, so it does exist. It's just kind of nothing. It barely even has Mario characters beyond the generic enemies and toads that act as NPCs, and every conflict is contrived and addressed extremely quickly. Even the final boss is barely connected to anything. Like I already said, the cutscenes are short and uninteresting, and the dialogue is shallow too. I doubt anybody was buying this game for the story, but if you're planning on that for some reason, definitely stay away. The characters are decent here. Again, I know I've said this before, but the roster is pretty great. It's not as good as some of the older Mario spin-off rosters like Mario Kart Wii's roster or Mario Sports Mix's roster, but it's a big step up from Mario Tennis Aces, especially before that game's updates. The characters here aren't well balanced, and that's an issue, but they are properly represented with their animations, special shots, dashes, and small voice lines. So in the sense of the roster, the characters are solid here. In the sense of the characters in the story mode, yeah, they're not great. Nobody really says much more than a few lines of dialogue, and all that dialogue feels pretty much soulless. The writing here reminds me of the writing from Paper Mario Sticker Star. It has pretty much no character. I won't dock too many points from the overall score for these complaints, as they largely are unimportant for a golf game, especially one with an already short and lackluster single-player campaign in terms of gameplay. But the story and characters here are pretty bad. They get in the way of the gameplay and feel like a waste of time more than anything else. At least the roster is pretty nice, and some of the dialogue was mildly entertaining. Still, I give the story and characters of Mario Golf Super Rush a 3 out of 10. Now, onto the visuals and sound. The visuals and sound of Mario Golf Super Rush are pretty decent, but they definitely could be better. Visually, this game is quite odd. At times it looks great. The models and designs are nice, the environments can look good, and the lighting can look fine. At other times, it's pretty rough. Some textures just aren't very good, and the edges of models can start to look very rough out of nowhere. For a Switch game, it still looks good. It could be better though. It's a small step down from the visuals of Mario Tennis Aces. I also encountered a few visual bugs, just super minor stuff like my character clipping through a podium, but they did kinda stand out, they were weird. The soundtrack here is very forgettable. I was shocked to see it was done by Motoi Sakuraba in the credits, who also did music for Kid Icarus Uprising and many Tales of games. It seems it's in all of Camelot's music though, which I didn't know until very recently. The soundtrack isn't any worse or better than that of the last few Mario sports titles. The sound effects are hit or miss. Hitting the ball gives a satisfying clink, but I heard "nice shot" a little too much for my liking. Overall, the sound and visuals of Mario Golf Super Rush are fine, but not outstanding. There are some minor issues and nothing is particularly great. I give the visuals and sound of Mario Golf Super Rush a 6 out of 10. In conclusion, Mario Golf Super Rush is sadly another disappointing Mario sports game. It's a small step in the right direction even from Tennis Aces. It really does seem like Camelot tried here, but everything falls just a tad short. If you really like golf games, this might be worth picking up. Otherwise, you're not missing too much. I give Mario Golf Super Rush a 5 out of 10. Well, that does it for my review. If you liked this video, I'd really appreciate it if you liked, commented, hit the notification bell, and or subscribed. I'd also recommend you check out some of my other content, like my ranking of the 2D Metroid games. Thank you all for watching, have a great rest of your day.